Hey, hello students. So in this problem, we will be solving a question which is based on System Verilog. And in this question, we are expected to write a function which returns some specific kind of uh, logic. So if we read this problem statement, then what it tells us first is create a class which is having name as packet. Then inside the class, create below two fields, which is a int of ID and logic 31 down to 0 of address. So these two are the just variables inside the class. And inside the class, we are also supposed to create two functions. First function with the name of get address high, and it should return me the address 31 down to 16th value. So if we see here, the address variable is defined as 31 down to 0, out of which we are only supposed to return 31 down to 16 when we call this class, when we call this function. And similarly, there is one more function which is having name is broadcast, and it should return me 1 when the address is equals to 8 times f, or else it should return me 0. So let's start with this code. So here, as we can see, this is the default code that is been written, and you are supposed to write your solution around here. So let's try to code this. So first try to create two variables as per mentioned in the class. One first is int and other is logic of 31 down to 0 of address. Then we are supposed to return create a function which is having name as get address of high. So right, and now as per described in the problem statement, it should return me the 31 down to 16th value of the variable address. So now in System Verilog, whenever you create any function, there are two things that you need to remember. The first is any function that you write in System Verilog executes in zero simulation time. And the second important thing is every function returns you something. For example, this function we need to return this value, that is address 31 down to 16. So every function has its own return at its own data type that can be returned. So let's say here you need to write something like you need to return something, and what you need to return that you need to specify here. Let's say 31 down to 16. And in the definition of function itself, when you declare a function, you are supposed to write its return type. So here the return type would be logic because the function itself is defined as logic. So let's say we need to return something 31 down. Uh, so let's say I just need to return, we can write 30, 15 down to 0. Right? So this function will basically return me logic 16 down to total 16 bits, which is logic 15 down to 0, and exactly which value to return that is specified by this on line number 7. So this is about the first function. So similarly, we need to write about the another function that we need to declare. So another function name is broadcast. All right. So here, what this function says is create a function with name is broadcast, and it should return one when address is equals to FFFF, FFFF, or else it should return me 0. So it's clearly visible that this function either will return me 1 or 0. So it's we can take the return type of this function as bit because it will is we are only expecting this function to return us 1 or 0. Now to decide what it will return, we can just simply write something like if address is equals to it where if address is equals to 8 times of f, then we are expecting this function should return us 1. So when this function will be executed, it will check this condition. And if it is true, then it will return me 1. Or if it is false, then it will simply return me 0. So these two functions you are supposed to write. And now let's try to run this code. So by the way, we had already written a test bench to verify the piece of logic is correct or not. Okay, it shows we are hitting some error. So let's debug. See, the test case 4 is failing, and what it says me is once test case 4, if you see the test case 4, then what it mentions that if the function we are passing this as an argument will return 0, we're expecting 0, but we got 1. So there is something wrong with this code, so we need to fix this. So let's try to fix. So, okay, if you see, right, here we should write double equals to. The reason we should write double equals to is because we are checking the value of address with this specific value, right? So whenever you are like, it's simply you can treat this as an if condition. Like if address is equals to this, then you are supposed to do then you're supposed to kind of return one. So in this case, because previously we had only written equals to 0, so it was not actually treating that as a condition or as a statement. So now let's try to rerun the code. So as you can see, our test case passed, all the four test case passed, and the final result is success. So one thing I would like to highlight here is in generally in VLSI or in RTL or in design verification, generally the skill that is more important apart from writing your codes is debugging. Like writing the code is easy, but making that code work is even more important. So let's say in this case, like we first end up doing the wrong solution, but then we need to analyze why the test case is failing and what you need to fix. So that is more important. So it can only come when you practice lot of question. So yeah, that's all for this question.